And we're live. Okay, so we thought, Alex and I, that we would just start recording some of our conversations that we've been having because we've had some really, really nice conversations over the past couple months, just insofar as it might be helpful to others. And so, I guess by way of introduction, Alex and I have known each other for what, like 15 years, maybe almost 20. When Alex's family moved back from Singapore, which is where he lived for a long time. Our dads had gone to high school together and then actually ended up going to college together and being roommates and weren't really much in touch because Alex's family lived in Singapore and mine lived in New Jersey. Um, but when you guys came back, we got in touch and kind of had a few family dinners and stuff. And I think you and I were kicking the soccer ball around during those family dinners. And so I said, hey, man, you're pretty good. Why don't you try out for my soccer team? And we were only 8 or 9, but this was a very intense competitive soccer program. And little did I know that Alex was going to be the star of the show and steal all my playing time. But we became really close friends, like family friends, of course. But then also, like, we were on this soccer team that was a travel team that was going all over the Eastern Shoreboard and playing teams all over from Virginia to Vermont to New Jersey, certainly. Um, Got pretty far in the state cup a couple times, and we spent countless hours as teammates and friends. And then our lives have just taken us in other directions. Alex lives in Vermont. I live in Brooklyn, New York. Um, but I guess, in the past year or two, we've really gotten back in touch. And Alex did some work in Sausalito, California, which is where I lived until recently. And so we got to spend 3 or 4 months together, just like in this tiny town in California, going to coffee shops in the morning and catching up, eating peaches and listening to Eat a Peach by the Allman Brothers, and um,
Wow,
but
so
really
good.
bonding over a couple things. But I think at the core of it really was like mental health, as we both have had pretty intense mental health journeys over the past 5 years, each dealing with mood disorders. For me, anxiety and depression, which have been pretty intense and pretty chronic, and trying to deal with it with medication, with therapy, but also just putting in a lot of work on my own with meditation and journaling and mindfulness, and just trying to be the best sort of caregiver to myself that I can possibly be. And
Mm.
Alex has a similar or maybe even more intense story. And we've really bonded over that and been quite forthcoming with each other and sort of allies to each other in this challenge, in this fight that I think a lot of people are fighting in silence, say. And so the goal of this video, and if it becomes a series, this series is just to sort of, open up about it, destigmatize it a bit, and then the friendship really in the past couple months has evolved even more during COVID, where even though we're states apart and so on, um, I am increasingly trying to build myself as a builder of brands. I'm a marketer and a founder myself. Um, and Alex is starting a company around his extensive education with respect to CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, meditation, mindfulness, etc., and helping people that want to, achieve equanimity, achieve some form of enlightenment and peace in their mental health travels. And so we've come up with this sort of fun bartering thing where I'm helping Alex launch and build his business, and giving him some tips and pointers there, and Alex is helping me become more enlightened and learn a lot of the things that he's learned over the past 5 or 10 years of taking his mental health journey very seriously. And so this is just sort of a window. It might be a one-off video, or maybe it's something we do weekly, or who knows, but into what one of our conversations looks like, at least on the Alex helping me side of things. We're not going to talk about his business today. Um, and I think we'll probably end up doing some form of guided meditation at the end. So in addition to sort of speaking and thinking through things, um, we'll actually do some work, and whoever's watching can join in on the exercise, or just sort of skip that part and do it on their own time in their own way. Um, does that summarize things well, or do you have anything to add to that?
That summarizes things very well. Couple interesting things to add would be that what brought me to California 2 years ago was this conference called Wisdom 2.0. There's a mindfulness and tech conference, which I highly recommend anyone to check out. And through that conference is when we had, it was March of 2018. That's when we had what stands out to me as kind of the beginning of our rekindling of the friendship at that pizza place. And that's where we first really opened up. Um, and then that got me the opportunity at the school. But then right here, we're using Google Meets, and we're essentially, this is a combination of mindfulness and technology. So that theme started a little over 2 years ago, and here we are again, kind of using technology and speaking about mindfulness and mental health. And so I don't know, I just wanted to draw out that theme.
Yeah, I think that's super cool. And actually, one of the things I wanted to tell you today also sort of leverages that theme, which is, COVID, and I say this very gently because it's been so very terrible for our country. Obviously, 125,000 people have died, many more have been sick, millions, tens of millions of people have lost their jobs, and it's been a terrible, terrible thing. And I think also just, my therapist tells me that all of his patients are 10 or 20% more anxious, more depressed. But for me, it's been quite clarifying. I've sort of eliminated a lot of the things in my life. I've eliminated my social life, really. I'm sort of living like a monk with my parents, and I've eliminated going to bars and restaurants and spending money I shouldn't be spending. I've eliminated a lot of the noise in my life and really focused in. And so my life, just to continue on your theme, Alex, of mindfulness and technology, that's really what my life has been boiled down to. Is interestingly, we didn't plan on this, but that's it. So mindfulness for me, there's a window right here that looks out over a beautiful field, and there are a couple other fields and forests and things beyond that. And so I have great access to nature where I am right now, and I've been sort of escaping and just sort of being at peace in nature. And then the second window is this one, the window we're speaking through. And I started a company that has 39,000 photographers and videographers, thousands of brands that connect in the middle. I run a consulting business and consult 8 or 9 businesses at this point on how to grow, how to be more efficient with their ad spend, more thoughtful with their marketing. And so my life basically is technology, about 60 hours a week, and I'd say 20 or 30 hours a week nature and being at peace in nature. And that's basically it. And so one of the things I wanted to talk to you about today is a theme we've talked about before, but is being enough and being not enough in one breath, and those things being at odds with one another. So, I want to be, when I'm in nature, say, I just am, or that's the goal, right? I am enough. Who I am today, what I am today is just fine. And being at peace. And at great odds with that is how I treat myself in my business life and in most aspects of my life, which is that I'm just not enough. I think I've been trained to think that way from my upbringing and going to intense schools and so on. But feeling like you're not enough in your professional life or your social life or whatever drives you forward. it brings out effort and intensity and passion. Um, you want more, and so you strive for more. And that striving yields fulfillment and a sense of purpose and, in my opinion, happiness. But if you are perennially reaching and the goalposts are moving and you want more and more and more, can you ever really be happy? Can you ever really be enough? So if you're always reaching, you're not enough. But conversely, if you're always enough and you reach full enlightenment and you are perfect just as you are, will you ever reach? Will you ever challenge yourself, grow, feel fulfilled, or seek fulfillment? And so this push and pull of I am enough, I'm not enough, I am enough, I'm not enough, um, is interesting to me, and it's quite jarring to me. So I'd love your input on that. But before I stop my little monologue, the second thing I'd love your input on, in addition to that push and pull, is um, I've been sort of living by myself in this little cabin in nature. I feel like Thoreau or something over here. Um, and my folks are here now. And I'm about to turn 30 in a couple weeks. And I feel so blessed, truly, to get this time with them as they're getting older. And that's been like a real gift. But suddenly, my parents are very closely watching how I conduct myself in my business life and other aspects of my life. Their thoughts and judgments of me are much more in my face than when I'm living in Brooklyn and they're living, where they live. Um, and it reminds me of this quote I love. It's a little heady, and I think I've told you it before, Alex. I am not who I think I am. I am not who you think I am. I am who I think you think I am. So, in other words, I am my perception of others' perception of me. So sometimes we think people are thinking things about us. They may or may not be, but that informs how we speak to ourselves and who we think we are. And I'm catching myself as my parents are here, sort of putting words in their mouth and assuming that they're feeling certain ways, or assuming that they're judging me, or and the scared little fifth grader who didn't do so well in school and had friction with his parents and so on is awakened in me. So something I'm working on a lot right now is sort of trying to be at peace with myself without the input of others, or in a vacuum, without worrying about my parents' perception of me, say, or your perception, or anyone that I'm coming in contact with. And how can I feel enough and feel valued, getting back to the first point, and love myself unconditionally, irrespective of other people's judgments or my perception of their judgments. So those are the two things sort of rattling around in my head since we last spoke. And I just, as always, would just love your thoughts on the matter. And also, as always, if there's an exercise we can do through breath work or some sort of guided meditation to sort of combat some of that rattling, I'd love to do that as well. And hopefully that's helpful to others if they're feeling equally rattly at the moment. Yep. You still there?
I'm still here.
That was fantastic, dude. The reason it was fantastic is because you got freeze framed with your eyes closed. And when I looked at you, I thought you were meditating. I thought you were like deeply in thought about what I was saying. And I was like,
I
wow,
was.
he's zenning out right now. But then it was just frozen. So I guess we'll edit that out. But anyway, sorry. Did you hear what I said? Like, I'd love to hear your thoughts and see if there's anything that we can do by way of guided meditation or breath work to sort of combat the rattling. And hopefully that's whatever we do, hopefully that's helpful to others who are watching this who are also rattling at the moment.
Yeah. So I was trying to listen to what you're saying in addition to recalling the key points of what you had already said at the same time. So that was kind of why I had closed my eyes. You asked for input for a couple main points. Um, and the second point was loving yourself unconditionally, um, with your perception of with the perception that you described of like who you are being the perception of other people's perception of you, and how that can get very tricky and loopy and circly, um, and how you want to love yourself unconditionally with all that there as the second point. And then the first point, right, the striving, non-striving, and the good enough, not yet good enough tension. So my input is that the remedy, the antidote, panacea, if you will, right, is always ongoing. Um, it never really ends.
Alex, if
But
you can't solve this for me in the next 30 minutes, what the fuck are we even doing? Come on.
it definitely takes some humor, right? That's a big part of it is to, again, right, another tension that just came to mind, right? Not taking yourself too seriously at all, but then at the same time, life is serious and we have a lot of problems to solve, right? So that is another thing. And so speaking to the first point, right? Like that's the human condition. Life and death. They're they don't happen at, well, you can think about like new moments are being born and then moments are dying. In this span of this call, depending on how you want to chop up and divvy up the moments, right? There have been thousands or hundreds of moments that have been born and thousands and hundreds of moments that have died. So this tension, you talk about existential crisis, like that is what comes out of this tension. Like this is part of being human. So I just want you to know, you're not alone. Like men, like the world over, at some point in their lives will encounter this tension, no matter whether they want to admit it or not. It's part of the human condition. Um, and the way I see it, then what's really helped me is to not see them as fighting each other, is to not see it as a tension, not to see it as, not to see it as a problem, just to acknowledge that these two contrasting forces in all of their metaphors and expressions, that they're just present at the same time. And that's just that. Um, Now it could be, there can be a long discussion on dissecting a lot of bits of what you said. We'll probably not do that now, right? Um,
That's the 3 hour podcast.
that's the 3 hour part. We could honestly splice up, because a lot of what you said, I think a lot of people can connect to, and there are serious worries and considerations about, like, I don't want to lose my motivation. Like, if I become so peaceful, will I lose my motivation, right? So these are important considerations that we'll probably just set aside for now. But I can tell you from my own experience that the fact that just because you feel like you are good enough, and just the fact that you can love yourself unconditionally, it doesn't demotivate you from wanting to achieve more. So it's like both tensions are almost, and not tensions, but the two contrasts, the two paradox, they are actually even present within each other. So they're there like on each end of the spectrum.
Can you,
If that makes
if you're
sense.
willing to share, and we don't, we can go into your story as deep or shallow as you want, but to summarize it by saying you've experienced extreme darkness as I have, and um, yeah, I guess maybe some of the seminal moments of like emerging from that and achieving. I don't know if you fully love yourself, Alex, or fully accept yourself, but my experience of you is that you're further along the journey than I am. So I'm curious, like, what have been some of the seminal moments or like the key findings in going from pretty extreme darkness, where for most people that means fundamentally not loving yourself, to loving yourself fully? Like, what have been some of the tent poles along the way?
Yeah, so the tent poles. I'd say I can go through different tent poles, and there are probably a few. The common thread from all the tent poles is that suffering has been my greatest gift, because you it becomes such a big part of your world that you have to do something. Um, and when you do that something, which is for me, mindfulness is a big part of it. And then it's just a whole recipe of living a healthy life, right? Like sleep and nutrition and exercise and all of that. But we're talking with mindfulness. The main thing has been applying mindfulness skills when I'm not doing so hot. And those have been my biggest moments of growth. Those have really, those have been the major tent poles, essentially, when I've suffered immensely and been able to apply techniques and grow concentration, clarity, and equanimity, which are the three main attentional skills in the system of unified mindfulness
So
that I
you've
practice.
said those to me before. Can you just repeat them again, maybe a bit more slowly for our listeners?
Sure
Because
thing.
something that I found extremely helpful through working with you is that I lived in California for 5 years, and I'm all for woo wooey, right? And like a lot of the mindfulness stuff I've done, a lot of the people I hang out with that are into being into themselves, let's say, in a
Yeah.
mindfulness enlightened way, it's very soft. It's very, but you have a real structure to this. There's like a real, you've studied this, and there's a real, formula. There's It requires hard work, diligence, and so on, but it's very structured. So you just sort of outlined three very important tenets of mindfulness, which are, again, sorry.
Yeah, for sure. Concentration, clarity, and equanimity.
Hi.
Hi,
Oh,
is
that's my
that
mom.
Barbie?
Look at this. This is a little mindfulness pick me up
I'm
here.
cheering him. I'm not cheering him. He doesn't need cheering, but just bring you a little joy.
Joy.
That's amazing. Thanks, Barbie. Oh,
There you go. That wasn't even planned. We got a little cameo.
I love it. um, so those three skills, right? And this is not my doing. I've studied the main tentpole. One tentpole for me was going on a mindfulness retreat in the fall of 2017 with Shinzen Young, who's the founder of Unified Mindfulness, which is the system that I practice in, and I'm an L2 level 2 mindfulness coach in Unified Mindfulness. So the structures and the definitions all come from Shenzhen and just the amazing community there. So I'm just, take that in. And
Here I thought you were this enlightened genius. You're just plagiarizing someone else. Okay. At least to get it on the record. I don't want to get sued.
none of this is my own. Um, yeah, no. But okay, some of it is, right? It's like when you write a paper, like, I don't know, when I was a philosophy major in college, I didn't come up with anything new. You just put stuff together that's already been thought out, and then you kind of maybe add a modicum or I don't even know what the definition of, just something super tiny that could be your own. So that's, as a mindfulness teacher, that's what I do. I take the wealth of information and experience from Shenzhen, from our lead trainer, Juliana, from all of the other expert coaches. And I do all the practices, I study, and then I digest it. And then you add your own personality to it. And that's where I'm at right now. So to get back to the definitions, concentration, clarity, equanimity, applying those to challenging moments in your life, that's how you turn suffering into a gift. It's not easy. It's not supposed to be easy. It's hard work to turn suffering into a gift. Like, really challenging. But if you stick with it over a lifetime, as Shinzen says, the show is worth the cost of admission. Like, what you get is worth the price you pay. And the price you pay is the work that you put in.
I love that, man. Dude, something I want to share with you. I had this interesting moment. I was having a rough patch a couple weeks ago. I called a dear friend whose name is Scott, and he happens to be gay. And I called my therapist, whose name is Scott, who happens to be gay. So just a lot of similarities in the people I sought out for advice. But both of them, friend Scott had told me this prior, and therapist Scott, I think, told me this maybe in response to it. But they both told me something I didn't know about the experience of being gay in general, but certainly more recently in a more enlightened society. That basically there are, and again, this may not be for everyone, but I've now heard it from two people, so I thought it was interesting. There are two coming outs when you are gay. The first coming out is you admitting to the world that you are gay. And it's usually accompanied by some frustration, remorse, anger. You're admitting it, but you're not happy about it. I don't want to be gay, but I am, right? Is sort of what it is. And then the second coming out happens later. And I think from what I gather historically, because society was less accepting, the gap between the first coming out and second coming out might have been a decade or 2 decades. For my friend Scott, it was a year or two. But he said, I had this second coming out where, James, I woke up one day and I was so grateful that I was born gay. It wasn't this thing that had been bestowed upon me and fuck, I wish I wasn't, but I am, and I'll admit it, but I don't like it. It was like, no, I'm stoked. Like, thank God I am gay, right? And what a wonderful thing, this second coming out that both of my friends Scott have experienced. And for me, with my depression, with my suffering, with my temperament, say, right? Like, I've come to realize, Alex, at my best, I'm up. I'm passionate. I'm high energy. I'm creative. I'm a connector. I bring people together. I do things. I output light and energy and love. But that same mind that moves faster than most, I think, just burns very hot, is the very thing that causes me to be depressed, be anxious, to overthink things. And so I think maybe a year or two ago, it was like, I have a problem. Like, I need to start seeing professionals. I need to start taking medication. I have a problem. I'm not fucking happy about it. and I'll take the meds, and I'll do the thing, and I'll see the therapist, and I'll kind of deal with it, but I'm not fucking happy about it. Don't get it twisted. And a couple months ago, and admittedly, I added a new medication to what I'm taking that's helped a lot, and I think just being in nature and so on. But I've had my second coming out. I feel that I'm grateful that have been born with the mind that I have. And I know that it means that I'll be depressed sometimes, or that I'll be anxious sometimes, or that I'll struggle with some things, as we all do sometimes. But I'll take that. I'll pay that price of admission for the holistic experience of being who I am. And I love who I am. And a year ago, I said to one of the therapists I was seeing, I don't love who I am. I don't love myself. Which is a sad and, unfortunate thing to say, and I think a lot of people feel that way to a certain degree. But I had this second coming out of like, I will subscribe wholesale. I will swallow hook, line, and sinker who I am, for better and for worse, in sickness and in health, in suffering and in good times. The brain that I have, the person that I am, I'm at peace with that. And that's been a big moment for me, Alex. And even since having that moment, I've had 2 troughs of mood where I've had to test that. Like, do I actually love myself when I'm at my ugliest? And the answer has more or less been yes. So it's sort of a rambly story, but I think that second coming out, the first coming out, which I think as mental health becomes less stigmatized, is very important. I have depression. I have anxiety. I am not my disease, but I have these things, and admitting it and coming out, that's important. But then the second coming out of, I'm actually glad that I was born this way. And as you say, this suffering has taught me so much, and I'm better for it. And being at peace with and grateful for the very suffering that causes you so much pain. I think that's a pretty powerful evolution that you have to get through. As you said, I do 4 hours of therapy a week, still, and I take medications, and I meditate, and I don't think I even work as hard as you do.
Well, that's the thing. I want us to say something. It's not a comparison thing, right? Like, one thing when I was in inpatient facility and outpatient, and hearing everyone's stories, these people who are suffering, right? Each story is unique in its own way, and no story is better than any other. It's really not. So, I just want to just say that, like, I'm listening to your story, and it's your story, and it's your truth. And I think, and then my story is my truth, and everyone else's. And we do have this kind of human brain that is constantly comparing. And I just want to let you know that, it's, no story is better than any other story, brother.
Totally. No, I appreciate you saying that. I just said what I said to sort of bolster what you said earlier, which is, it takes a shit ton of work, and I can attest to that, because I put in a shit ton of work, and you've put in even more work, I think. And not that I'm putting a value on that, but the point is, if you want to make progress, if you want to move, if you've just come out, say, and admitted to yourself or those you love that you're struggling or hurting in some way, and you want to make it to the second tentpole of, I can't remember quite how you phrased it, but basically like being at peace with your suffering, being grateful for your suffering, because it's at those seminal moments where you grow, develop, and become better and more whole as a person. That acknowledgement, that acceptance, is a huge moment. But between coming out 1 and coming out 2, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. That I've put in, that you've put in, and that most people that I talk to about this sort of thing need to put in. You can't just go from suffering to being, fully enlightened and fully grateful for said suffering without putting in the work. So that was my point. Is just, I admire you for how seriously you've taken this, and I further admire you for, I still remember, man, calling you. I was on New Jersey Transit on a train, and I'd heard through my parents that you were having a rough time. And this was 5 years ago. And I remember calling you and just wanting to be there for you. And in those and I think you were in inpatient when I called you. And I, as most people are on the outside, like I felt helpless, but I wanted you to know that I loved you and that I cared about you. And I was there in whatever way I could be that would be helpful. And I'm just so proud of you for putting in the work, making the progress that you have, and now with the business you're starting, giving the gift, as you have to me and you will to many others, I'm sure, of taking what you've learned and passing it on to help others in their journey. I just think that, isn't that, what is life if not, biologically speaking, our goal is to take what we've learned and pass our seed and train our young. And beyond our direct lineage, doing it with people that share our temperament or experience of the world. Isn't that what life's all about? And I'm proud to be your friend and to be someone walking a similar path to you, because I just admire how you've walked it.
Geez, James, thank you. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, you
That
should be
means a
proud.
lot.
You should be proud.
I share all of that, and it's all true what you said. And I think it's probably a good time. Do you want to do a practice? Do you want to do a little work right now?
I definitely do. I'm going to pause the video because I have this fear that it's going to run over its space limit or something and crash this whole thing. So I'm going to pause it, save what we've done so far, and then we can pick back up in a second and do a mindfulness exercise. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're back. I'm now recording you again since you can't tell. I need you to know. Don't say anything really dumb or mental health is for nerds or anything like that. So we were just pontificating, or I should say I was pontificating and you were speaking very concisely and eloquently as always. But here we are. So this is how it normally goes. I kind of blab about my life. You put some structure around it as per what you learned from, sorry, what's his name again?
Shinzen Young.
Yes. And so you say, well, James, the things you're blabbing about, actually, you're not the first person to feel this way and think of these things, believe it or not. And there's actually quite a lot of structure. Actually, since I'm recording my screen, I'll just pull up, I think, where did I take, oh, maybe it's notes.
I found all of your notes.
Yeah, these are notes I took from one of my calls with Alex. You can see how detailed they are. And that was him just riffing and talking about, Alex, I'm looking at, 3 attentional skills: concentration, clarity, equanimity, emphasis on defining terms, clear terms, groundedness, motivating, true substance, CCE, each has a flavor. Deeply concentrated state has a flavor. So does deep clarity. So does deep equanimity. Your favorite is equanimity. Here's how we're going to do practices. There are 4 ways to train over your lifetime. ... So there's just such rigor to this stuff. And I think that's something that's lost on people that think that mindfulness is this vague woo-woo-y thing, or it's an app called Headspace. But I don't think people know that there's quite a lot of structure to this. And so for all of my friends that are going to be watching this are kids that went to top tier schools and work at intense companies, and they're not woo-woo-y people. And they're the kind of people that when they do something, they do it with a structure. And this has one, which I like. So the way it normally works is I blab, Alex adds structure, and then based on where the conversation ends up, Alex is far from a one-trick pony. We've done 3 or 4 different types of exercises that he thinks will be helpful as per where our conversation net out. And so today, I don't even know what's coming, but I guess what will come next is Alex is going to recommend that we do an exercise. So I'll just let you describe that now, and we can do it. And if people want to sit through 10 minutes of me doing some form of meditation, they can, or do it with us, or they can sort of take the instructions end the video here and go and do it themselves?
Yeah. So I definitely encourage anyone watching to do the practice. You don't gain the benefits if you don't do the practice. Just like you won't get faster if you're running a race without running beforehand. You can't just run a marathon tomorrow. Uh, so, anyways, this is the marathon of life, and it's a marathon, and you gotta train. You can think of this as mental training. We train our bodies. Why not train our minds?
Alex is a formidable athlete, so that analogy is not. No, seriously, dude. Shit, I used to
Okay.
think I was good at soccer, and then I met Alex. But but yeah, no, I mean you've done both, right? You've played soccer at very high levels, and you have trained your mind. And so when you say this requires work and you train to accomplish your goals and so on, like that means something to you. That analogy wasn't just like an empty one, is all I was saying.
Yeah, thanks, James. So we are going to do a 10 minutes of breathing. We spoke about concentration, clarity, and equanimity as the three attentional skills that you grow when you practice mindfulness, which are transferable over into your life. So we grow them as we formally practice. We raise our overall baseline of mindful awareness over time. And today's practice is going to be applying concentration, clarity, and equanimity to our breath, to the sense experience of breathing. So we'll begin the practice.
Love it. Tell me what to do because I'm a noob.
I'll definitely tell you what to do. So you can find a comfortable posture. For this particular practice, I recommend that you close your eyes. You should be sitting up relatively straight, but not rigid, alert, and relaxed. And whenever we do a technique, we have an object of focus, which in this case is our breath and the sense experience of breathing. And we have an instruction set. And the instruction set in this case is to bring concentration, clarity, and equanimity to our breath. So concentrate on your breath. Be clear about the details of what it's like to breathe. And equanimity is the opposite of resistance. So I will not tell you how to breathe at all.
I've been doing it for years.
So keep doing it. Keep doing it the way you've been doing it. And if you happen to be breathing deeply, just allow yourself to breathe deeply. If you happen to be breathing more shallow or more quickly during this 10 minutes, allow yourself to breathe more shallow or more quickly. If it's variable and you pause, breathe like that. Those moments where you feel like you should be breathing a different way and you simply drop that should, much in the way that we drop the shoulda, coulda, wouldas for who we are as people. That moment you drop the way you should be breathing, you're strengthening your equanimity. It might be very subtle, and that's okay. Subtle is significant. So for a couple minutes now, apply concentration, clarity, and equanimity to your breath. If your mind is very active and you get distracted by thoughts or images, just know that's normal, it's common, and kindly redirect your attention to your breath. If it helps, you can say to yourself, inhale while you inhale, and exhale while you exhale. And just string a couple of those together to get some concentration going. If that's all you do for the remainder, you're growing your skills. Continue to come back to your breath. Begin again if you've left it. And if you've been able to stay with your breath, have some fun. You know, it's important to be self-disciplined as we practice. But in the long run, we'll be more likely to practice if it's fun. So be curious about the sense experience of your breath. Maybe you're curious about how your belly rises and falls. Maybe you're interested in the light inflow and outflow of the actual air. Whatever is true for you or whatever you're interested in about your breath, notice the details to strengthen your clarity. Keep going. Continue to allow your breath to breathe itself. See what it's like to breathe without effort. In the same way that there are sometimes two contrasting concepts present, such as I am enough and I am not enough at the same time, we can breathe effortlessly while we relate to it with effort. Because it does take effort to grow our concentration, clarity, and equanimity. So for the last minute, hold this effort, growing of skills, and the effortless way we breathe. Hold these both at the same time. Okay, nice work. We'll end this formal practice now, so you can open your eyes. They're closed, and give yourself a pat on the back, because the best meditation is one that you actually do, not one that you think about doing. It's a nice job.
Sometimes you think about it while doing it, though. You know. Yeah, it's amazing when you open your eyes. You really do sort of. I know meditation is a practice, and it's mostly about doing it continually. But even just immediately after, slowing down when my brain goes so fast all day, the way things look, the way my brain feels, like you do feel a difference after 10 minutes like that.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And yeah, what normally happens now is you know, relate the practice to what some of your goals were. So hopefully, you feel like we touched upon some of your two main themes and points um, that we had in the earlier discussion, and then we'll practice, and then now we have a period for Q, question and answer, and reports. If you just had a little report, but is there anything else, any other questions you have or reports from that period?
I was thinking of 6 jokes, none of which are that funny.
6?
6, yeah. I was gonna make a joke about Liverpool, and then I was gonna make a joke about your haircut, and I was gonna tease you about all kinds of stuff. But
What
um,
were the other 4? I got 2.
there were at least 2, as many as 6. Um, yeah, I don't think I have any. I mean, I'm curious about, Alex, is like I've gotten so much value out of doing this with you for the past month or two. It's just been nice to it's been nice for a bunch of reasons. I need to make mindfulness a bigger part of my mental health portfolio, let's say, in meditation.
Okay, word. Yeah.
Um, so that's been helpful, just like having the discipline for that. It's been fun to sort of talk to you about it and intellectualize a bit about and learn about some of these structures and some of these thinkers that have come before us who have figured out the pathway to enlightenment, and that to know that there is in fact a pathway, I think has been really interesting to me, that it's more prescribable and precise than I think I would have given it credit or previously thought. And then the last thing is I'm actually excited, and maybe I shouldn't be because it takes away from this and being in the present, but I can't help but think, like, if someone has actually watched and is still listening to this point, like, I think this will be helpful to people. And so something I'm curious about is, if it is, what comes next, or what further is helpful to people, and what other topics can we discuss and sort of shine a light on that are emblematic of things that many of our peers struggle with and haven't thought as much about. I've been thinking a lot about sizing up. So I'm one person, you are one person, but how can we help many? And
Mhm.
I like the idea of, spending some time on Saturday morning with a coffee, a good friend, and working on my meditation practice, but in so doing, helping others. So we'll see if people are interested in this, and if they are, what feedback we get and what other areas of intrigue there are that we can maybe dive into in ensuing weeks if we both feel excited about it. So it's just sort of an observation or something. When you said your mind is wandering, it was in fact, and often it was wandering to like, this is so cool. I'm glad I'm doing this, and like, I think other people will get value out of this, and I hope that this can continue in that way.
Yeah, that's lovely, James. Yeah, I'll be around to continue with the conversation and the ongoing, never-ending balancing act that is life. Uh, and yeah, maybe we could ask. I mean, I'm not an expert on everything, but I'm an expert on my own life experience. And so, yeah, maybe folks have certain topics or themes that they want to talk about, and we can speak about how unified mindfulness, um, sees those things, or how it fits in with inside the vessel, how unified mindfulness might classify all of that.
Yeah, I think
Another
I
thing,
think the protocol I want to follow, or the structure for this, I think is going to be, I want to post it and do what I do and like market it, right? And one person may respond, 100 people, 0 people. And if 0 people, that's fine, and I'd love to keep doing this with you. If we get 100 people that respond, I want to act as a lightning rod for sort of like, what are people grappling with during COVID and during this weird time, or just in general over the past couple of years, as we all get into our late 20s, early 30s? What are some of the themes that come bubbling to the top? And then I'll, as that lightning rod, bring it into our sessions, like either I'm thinking about, or it seems like a lot of my friends are thinking about, and then just give you the opportunity to react, either as a smart guy or someone who has done this training. Um, and then finish with some sort of an exercise, and people can join us in that journey or not. But I think it's sort of I think it's a good little package.
mhm. Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think before we leave, we should probably define enlightenment, actually.
So,
Uh,
so I don't just keep throwing out random terms that carry weight without me. Yeah, that's probably a good idea. Why don't you define it? Because I'm just using it in my own way, but I'm probably using it incorrectly.
yeah, well, I wouldn't say it's incorrectly necessarily, but it's the way that you think it is. I think a lot of people uh, have a definition, their own definition of enlightenment or liberation or awakening. Um, for me, I think there's a lot of connotation around the word enlightenment that, like, oh, snap, you'll become enlightened and then life will be easy and, it's all just a joyride from here. And um, I don't think that that's the way it is. Um, Hearing people who say that they are enlightened, that's not what they say. Um, they say it completely changes the way they live, but there's still struggle and hardship. But they now have the tools to work through that a little bit better. So my definition, ooh, you know what my definition would be
What's
of
that?
enlightenment?
If you take your clothes off, we're gonna have to cut the camera. But go ahead.
This will hopefully, this might bring people back. I don't. This might be some unconscious, now conscious marketing. Um, Enlightenment to me is to be able to have full expertise with each box on this periodic table of happiness elements. So we don't have to go through each box right now, but this is provided and created by, again, Shinzen Young, who's the meditation teacher. And each box has a heading, right? Or sorry, each column has a heading, and then you go down, and it's not necessarily, again, better or worse. It's just deeper um, types of that theme. So for me, enlightenment is expertise in minimizing suffering, maximizing fulfillment, understanding yourself, acting skillfully, and serving from love.
I love how you just
So,
had that next to you, like this wasn't planned at all. And you're just like, oh yeah, I guess this piece of paper that's sitting next to me. Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And one thing I'd add, if I may, and you can tell me if it's wrong, but I'm just sort of parroting what you just said back, is like in my line of work, we talk about process oriented or outcome oriented. Are you a person who's process oriented or outcome oriented? And it seems to me that like enlightenment is a process modification, not an outcome or modification, right? Like um, people that seek enlightenment as an end goal, as you said, like I will be enlightened, and then it's more like I will live in a way to seek enlightenment or to live in an enlightened way, go about my process in an enlightened way. Um, so to me, it's like, how do you continue to engage with the outside world and engage with yourself in a way that incorporates some of those things, minimalizing suffering, maximizing your love of self, serving others with love. Those all inform process. They all inform how we exist and how we engage with others. But it's not necessarily an outcome. It's not necessarily a goal. You know.
yes, I think that's a great way to put it. One addendum to that is, uh, in my view, it does also, I won't want to use the word require, but if you like have a moment of awakening or, have a moment of liberation, right? Like maybe like you described with Scott, like that second coming out, right? Something like that. If that isn't followed out by some type of positive behavior change, um, then for me, you'd have to take a closer look, right? Because there are plenty of people who claim to be enlightened and they're still jerks. So, you have to, again, like many things in unified mindfulness and life in general, you have to be rigorous with what you're talking about.
Fair enough, and a good call out. All right, let's exit here because I think the chances that if there's one person still watching, they're probably asleep. But but I think there's some good stuff in here, and let's just see where it goes. And if it's just you and me in this little world together, that would make me thrilled. And if it's you and me and 100 or 1,000 people watching and getting some value from it, that would make me thrilled too. So let's just see what happens.
I love it, James.
Good to see you, my friend.
You too, brother.
Until next time.